Welcome to the WST post-game reaction. My name is Hrabchak. In a moment, I'm going to be joined by Lyss Houde, and together we're breaking down the Winnipeg Jets' 5-3 loss on Thursday night to the Seattle Kraken. Lots to take away from this one. The Jets held a 3-2 lead going into the third, and a 3-goal third period for the Kraken. A blown lead for the Jets gives the Kraken the win. The Jets fall to 1-4 on this road trip. Dylan Samberg and Gustav Nyquist return to the lineup tonight from injury, so lots to break down in this one. To do that, let's bring in my co-host on WST Sunday Live, Lyss Houde. Lyss, what's your initial takeaway / reaction to tonight's 5-3 loss to the Seattle Kraken? I know that's pretty open-ended, and this game's going to take a lot. There's a lot of takeaways, but what kind of stands out to you as we're fresh off this loss?
Yeah, if we want to go, we call these the post-game reactions. So my initial reaction is, I wish I had more fun games to stay up till past midnight to watch on
Agreed.
the past, week or so that we've been on here. That's my initial reaction. I think that, like you said, 1-4 on this road trip here. Another late start. This grueling trip continues and it's not over yet. There's still another one before they come home next Tuesday. And look, my initial reaction is that, this is a Winnipeg Jets loss. That didn't have to be a Winnipeg Jets loss. Like we said, they went into the third period with a lead that, is not a situation we found ourselves in a ton last year when we were talking about this team, right? They didn't blow a lot of leads. They didn't do all that sort of stuff a whole ton. We didn't have a lot to talk about there. But the big thing for me is that, in this game, and we'll get into some of Scott Arniel's comments and some of the stuff, there's not some glaring thing that I'm like, wow, that was the problem. Seattle did this one thing and the Jets couldn't handle it. The Jets broke down this one thing and they couldn't handle it. They just weren't good enough. Mm-hmm. They just weren't good enough. And you can kind of circle a lot of different areas that were just, there was nothing electric enough. There was nothing dynamic enough. There was nothing positive enough to kind of get over the hump to, they traded goals back and forth all game with the Seattle Kraken, and to actually put their foot down, there just wasn't enough there from top to bottom in this lineup tonight, which is more alarming to me, to be honest with you, than if there was one specific thing that they totally missed the boat on. I don't like that. I really don't like that. So that's kind of my initial reaction, and then also my initial kind of assessment of the last 60 that we just watched.
For sure. And I do want to give a quick shout out to the Seattle Kraken as well. The last time the Jets played the Kraken, they shut them out 3-0, and I thought the Kraken's defensive structure was really strong in that game. I thought they were good again tonight. The Kraken were. They even played Philip Grubauer instead of Decord. Decord shut out the Jets earlier in the season. Seattle played their backup tonight, still got a win. They really stuck with it and pushed in the third, and the Jets really couldn't handle it. And to me, Lyss, the big glaring, initial takeaway thing that I'm taking away from this game was something that Scott Arniel was asked about first by Ken Wiebe of the Winnipeg Free Press, who's on the road covering the game, was the defensive breakdowns, the coverage issues, if you will. And Scott Arniel called them exactly that. He said their reads and their coverage were poor. Execution was an issue for them. He said, quote, usually going into the third period with a lead, that's locked down for us, is what he said. And we'll get into some of his other comments as well. But just on the defensive side of the puck list, especially in that third period, the fourth goal, the game winner, Jordan Eberle is wide open backdoor. Again, the Jets taking a 3-2 lead into the third. You don't quite see that level of defensive breakdown time and time again. And look, the Seattle Kraken had 18 shots on goal, but a lot of them high quality. They outchanced the Jets in this game 26-17 in scoring chances. The expected goals 3.2 to 2.2 in Seattle's favor. So they weren't maybe pulling the trigger as much as the Jets were in terms of shots on net, but the shots they were getting, Lyss, were high quality. And I agree with Scott Arniel's assessment that their coverage, their reads, their in-zone defensive zone coverage was poor. And there's really no other way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, when, you have a line that plays the bulk of your 5-on-5 minutes, that being the top line for the Winnipeg Jets, and that's something that they're poor at, not a great sort of foundational piece for that. And when you allow for the opposing team to get that sustained zone pressure that they were able to get tonight, not a great start. And then in particular, I think that the top pairing was kind of a contributor to that as well. I don't understand why those 5 players in particular struggle so much along the walls in their own zone. I don't know if it's because they're too scared to commit to a particular read in a situation. I don't know if because they don't want to abandon the guts of the ice or whatever it is, but man, oh man, they create so much havoc as a 5-man unit when they're in the O zone. But as soon as the puck starts being rimmed around the boards or there's a little bit of a battle kind of in their own zone, they struggled to come out on the right side of that puck frequently. And tonight, Seattle really capitalized on those particular moments. And so I think that it was not a great game in that regard, but it's becoming a pattern. It has been a pattern. It's a known pattern, especially with that top line, right? That's not something that they're excellent at. But the whole point is that if you give them, face-off wins, ozone starts, jumping on the fly, and they're able to kind of cook a little bit in transition, they're more than fine. They can create ozone pressure like nobody's business. And you'd think that people who understand how to do that so well maybe be a little bit better in a larger sample of managing it in their own zone, but we just haven't seen that yet over the last couple of years. So it's very fascinating to me, and I think tonight was just kind of a display of that for sure.
Yeah, and I'm going to quickly, we like bringing up the goal visualizer here on the post-game reaction. I'm going to quickly run through some of the goals because a lot of them, we could probably spend an entire post-game reaction on each. But let's start with, you brought up that top line and top defensive pairing duo. Here's Capo Caco's goal early on in the game. That 5-man unit that you alluded to there, Lyss, is on the ice. The Connor, Scheifele, Velarde top line and the Morrissey DeMello defense pair. DeMello, pressure behind the net, throws the puck away. Seattle gets on it. Schwartz kind of has room at the bottom of the circle there, and he throws it to the net. Caco's kind of uncontested in front and gets a deflection through kind of under the arm of Connor Hellebuck. And this was a pattern all night, whether it resulted in a goal or not. The Seattle Kraken getting in on the forecheck on this top pairing, DeMello and Morrissey being unable to move it, guys being open in the slot. Let's quickly run to this next goal here. Vince Dunn.
You key in on Josh Morrissey in that one. What is he doing? Like the cycling, like watch him kind of like commit to, he goes back to kind of cut off that pass and get it. And then he follows the winger up the boards and then he doesn't commit all the way. And then all of a sudden he's doing some weird dance around the middle. I'm so confused by what the decision making was on that particular one from him.
Yeah, and let's go to this next one, Vince Dunn. I think this was like a sneaky bad goal from this 5-man unit where the puck goes down low. Seattle kind of forces it out front, and Vince Dunn, who was just at the point, is able to win the race to the puck, which is in the slot. You got to get a stick on that. You got to be there. That's a high danger area. And I know Josh Morrissey was maybe half of a stick length away from breaking this play up and even got a piece of it, but you still can't let chances like that. And we don't see the Jets give up chances like that very often, but this season it's becoming more and more of an issue, and the defensive breakdowns are more and more by the game when you're facing these teams, San Jose and Anaheim of late. A game like this, Seattle, third in the Pacific. They're a playoff team right now. If the playoffs started today, they're going to take advantage of chances like this. And this is another one, Lyss, where you talk about
Velarde doing on this one.
You talk about the top line, the 5-man unit, along with the Josh Morrissey pairing. Now let's go to the Jordan Eberle goal. And I think honestly, this was the eventual game winner. This one was also bad. I mean, I've said it for each of these goals, but this isn't the 5-man unit. This is the second line, the Taves line with the Morrissey DeMello pairing. And this one is just a backdoor tap in. Matty Beniers taking the puck over the line, drops it to Mason Marchment. He kind of battles with Vladimir Meskov, goes back to the point to Beniers, who finds Jordan Eberle wide open backdoor. Dylan DeMello loses track of his man. And really just, I'll say an uncharacteristically tough night for the Morrissey DeMello pairing, Lyss.
Yeah, no, I think I clued in on Morrissey on that first one. This is the Dylan DeMello goal to me. It's just, I understand that players make blunders and all these sorts of things. This is just poor decision making and execution, and in my opinion, I don't understand. What I don't know if logic is the right word, but that's your guy. That's your guy. And I think that, in the first one, he's the one who does cough up the puck there, but it's kind of a conventional rim, like where the F1 gets a stick on it and life goes on, like that happens. But this one is just, you can't leave a guy where Jordan Eberle is there. And I think this is kind of was a bit of a nail in the coffin. I understand at that point, it's just an up by one and there's lots of hockey left to play, but can't be giving up that goal. And you're right. It just wasn't a great game in zone for much of the team tonight. And I think that you brought it up that, Scott Arniel specifically mentioned the reads and the coverage. Hockey is all about executing on the structure that you're supposed to do and then managing the chaos that happens if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that both of those things were pointed out by Scott O'Neill bright and early on, being like, those suck tonight. Like, that's the whole game. That's the entire game. That's all hockey is. So that clearly wasn't a performance, kind of a full 60 that the team was overly impressed with by any means, if you're circling all those areas as points of contention for this game.
For sure. And the only 2 goals I didn't show, Ellie Tolvanen power play goal and the Jordan Eberle empty netter. The 3 that I did show were all 5-on-5, where the Jets have been money, 5-on-5 defensive, chance.
That's the Jessica
prevention.
Campbell power play to you.
Yeah, there you go. Love it. But yeah, like the Jets they were elite at preventing chances last season. And this season they just haven't been that. And we're also entering a spot list where I've had, time for struggles so far this season. Perfetti had been out, Lowry had been out, Samberg had been out, Barron has missed time, Nyquist has missed time, Koepke is now missing time. I've had time for defensive breakdowns and all of these things. Like I could see it. Dylan Samberg being out, he's kind of the stabilizing force of that entire defense core. What we're entering in this next month and a half, as we continue to figure out what this Winnipeg Jets team is like the no excuse zone. Perfetti's back. He's had a couple of games now. Lowry's back. He's had a couple of games now, and I thought Lowry has been great. Dylan Samberg's now back, the stabilizing force of that defense core. But tonight it was the top pairing. And other nights it might be the third pairing. Other nights it might be that second pairing with Samberg and Pionk. But right now there's just far too many defensive breakdowns, and there's almost no more excuse. You have Connor Hellebuck, your lineup's fully healthy. Now's the time. You treaded water without these players. Now's the time where you're almost supposed to be, making hay with all of these players back and playing better. And in the first game of that, with all 3 of those players back, we didn't see that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that, there's a couple pieces to that. The guys who are missing and have missed time with some injury, barring, kind of excluding Gustav Nyquist, who really hasn't missed that much. He's missed, less than a half dozen games or whatever. Guys like Dylan Samberg and Cole Perfetti know how to work with this team. They know the coaching staff. They know the other players and their tendencies and their characteristics really well. So you can't, necessarily talk about the jitters in the early stages of figuring stuff out with those guys getting back in. Like you're totally right that, this is getting to be the territory of what can you do? You talk about missing key guys for injuries, and yeah, there's been a little bit of a revolving door of who's been hurt. It's not like there's necessarily been like 1 or 2 key guys who've been out all season. They've kind of been coming back in waves or been losing them in waves and stuff. I get that. But I know that there's no such thing as an internal replacement for your best players, but whenever they're not playing, especially for extended periods of time, it's okay. How do you manage and what do you do? And what we've seen through 17 games of this team is exactly what you said, treading water. Pretty easy schedule, all things considered. Yeah, they're on a bit of a grueling road trip right now, but they haven't played a ton of back-to-backs. They've been playing some pretty chill teams, all things considered. Haven't seen a Colorado Avalanche yet, haven't seen a Vegas Golden Knights yet, all these different things. They haven't, had a super, super strong schedule in terms of the quality of competition. And they've just been okay. And this is going back to the point that I kind of started with my opening monologue with. It's just, it's my commentary might sound uninspiring right now, but I think I might just be matching the vibe of the product that we're seeing.
They're 1-4 on the road trip.
It's there,
There's really, like I said, we're entering the no excuse zone where all of these players are back, and there's really no, other explanation for poor defensive coverage for this team. They're returning the entire same defense core and same goaltender from last year, and they have Adam Lowry back, who's their best defensive forward, and all of those things. And I will say this road trip, they're 1-4. 3 of those losses have come to the top 3 teams in the Pacific. So the strength of schedule, like you said, Liz, is starting to ramp up a little bit here with Anaheim, LA, and Seattle beating the Jets on this trip. They'll get the Flames on Saturday, the Blue Jackets on Tuesday. And then I think it really picks up where you get Carolina, you get, I think, a Colorado and a Vegas early or late in November and early December and all of those things. So this is the time where you want Dylan Samberg to be back. You want Adam Lowry to be back and playing at his best, and same with Cole Perfetti. And the Jets 10-7 on the season will look to salvage this road trip as best they can on Saturday with a win over the Calgary Flames, who are the 32nd best team in the NHL, 5-12-2. So they'll look to get back on track in that game before 2 days off and returning home for a quick 3-game road trip against the Blue Jackets, the Hurricanes, and the Minnesota Wild. But tonight, Lyss, Dylan Samberg did return. And as if people have been watching WST Sunday Live last season and this year in the post-game reactions, you know I'm a big Dylan Samberg guy. Over 23 minutes for Samberg tonight. No restrictions on his play. He had 18 and a half minutes at 5-on-5. The Jets were above 58%, let's say, in shot attempts, shots. They scored a goal with Dylan Samberg on the ice. Expected goals percentage was 65%. Scoring chances were 6-5 in the Jets' favor. So Dylan Samberg was back, and there was absolutely a little bit of rust there, Lyss, but still a positive game from Dylan Samberg and the Neil Pionk and that pairing. And Dylan Samberg, there were some classic plays in this game where he disrupts some plays in the neutral zone, and maybe I should get back to this goal visualizer because
I was going to bring up the goal visualizer. Why not?
Okay, you start talking about that goal, and I'll bring it up.
Sure, yeah. No, and I think that the play that you're talking about in particular is from, is it the stretch pass goal for Mark Scheifele?
The stretch
where
pass.
That one is kind of a really good, it captures the vibe of the Dylan Samberg, Neil Pionk pairing at their best, where, it's not necessarily their fault or whoever's fault it is. The opposing team has the puck. In they come on the break-in, and Dylan Samberg, like you use the word disrupt, that's the word I like to use too, kind of screws it up a little bit for the other team. And the possession turnover there isn't exactly clean, but you just got to bobble the puck over to your puck moving defenseman and up he goes. And this is like kind of the far end of the bell curve in terms of moving the puck up the ice as a defenseman. Like, this is pretty ridiculous, all things considered. But I think that, it shows what they're capable of doing, right? You have the guy who's able to make that read, get the stick in the right lane, and then the second part of that is extremely important, is what do you do with the puck afterwards? And if you don't, necessarily get controlled possession yourself, what you do is you put your D partner in the best position to succeed in managing the breakout in that regard, knowing that there are forecheckers coming in and all that sort of stuff. And, he being Neil Pionk catches Mark Scheifele on a perfect line change here and sees his guy, and Mark Scheifele makes no mistake, like absolutely gorgeous shot, nails it, no questions asked. But I think that kind of captures what we know that this pairing can do, turning defense into offense very, very quickly.
Absolutely. And over the past, last year was the breakout for that pairing with Samberg stepping into the top 4 role. And I think one of the biggest reasons was that both can kind of do a little bit of both, but the two guys are still elite at what they're elite at. And Samberg's the elite neutral zone disruptor, and Pionk is the elite stretch passer. And this was perfect for this pairing on this goal, as Mark Scheifele gave the Jets a 2-1 lead at the time, his 10th of the season. Kyle Connor then later scored on the power play, his 10th of the season as well. And Kyle Connor scoring on the power play for the first time since December 23rd, 2024. Unbelievable.
That's
it was
insane.
a road
we almost
game.
Went a full year.
Yeah, it was a road game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the last game before the Christmas break last season. So he went the entire
and
rest of the
healthy. That's the other thing too.
He played every game.
He didn't miss time. This isn't like a he had a spleen problem in March or whatever, as we know happens to the top line. Yeah. Like, he played that whole time. That's, I know. Unbelievable. Wacky business.
Very, very wacky for one of the most talented shooters in the NHL. And
a guy who had a good season last year, and a power play that had a good season last year. Like, it's so weird.
97 points.
Scott Arniel kind of alluded to my favorite kind of point of discussion with power plays of, he didn't say it by name, but the whole concept of a gravity score on a power play, where it's like sometimes having one of the best threats in the league makes you good, even when that threat doesn't do anything, because the penalty killers are so psyched out about that guy. They're tripping out. They're overcorrecting to trying to defend him. And every time he winds up for a shot, you have guys committing to blocks that they wouldn't be committing to if it was the other way around. And all of a sudden, if he's not shooting the puck, you have all the time in the world on the other half wall or whatever. And it's so much fun. So, but look, that's insane that it took that long for him to get back on the board on the power play. So I'm sure that that's the sort of thing that, you want to talk about intangibles, whatever. If that were to prompt some kind of Kyle Connor goal scoring resurgence, I think that it
Power
would be
play
welcome
heater.
from the Winnipeg Jets right now.
For sure. And look, the top line did contribute 2 goals on this night. Scheifele and Connor, like I said, each scoring their 10th of the season. The other one, Alex Iafallo on a really nice 4-on-3 rush from the Winnipeg
That was
Jets.
the best like goal of the game, in my opinion.
It was. They managed it really well. All 5 players touched the puck on that one. Morrissey up to DeMello, and then Niederreiter, Iafallo, Lowry, with Iafallo finishing it off on that rush. But let's get to our first of 2 segments here on the WST postgame reaction.
The hardest working Jet.
This is the hardest working Jet. We hand out the Hard Hat Award here on the WST post-game reaction, our hardest working Jet from the game. If you're enjoying the video, drop your pick in the comments down below. Who was your hardest working Jet from this one? And while you're down there, hit the like button. We really appreciate it. Lets YouTube know we're putting out some great content. Lyss, I'll let you go first on this one. Who's your hardest working Jet from tonight's loss?
Yeah, maybe I'll steal yours, but I don't know if this is going to be what you're going to pick. But Dylan Samberg gets mine. We already gave him a bit of a glowing review. And unfortunately, the Winnipeg Jets are 0-1 this season when Dylan Samberg starts to finish as a game. But I'm sure that will change over the course of the season. But he had some really positive numbers kind of across the board in his performance tonight. We understand that rest is a bit of a thing with these players, and it didn't seem to kind of affect him in the aggregate. So first penalty of the game that the Winnipeg Jets take, he's right out there in the D zone draw on the first unit of the PK. And, that very first shift that he takes, no shots on goal from Seattle and stuff, they threw him right back in, and he was good off the hop. So I'll give him some love in a game where there wasn't a ton of it to go around from me.
For sure. Dylan Samberg, 23:04 time on ice, +1 in the game, 2 shots on goal. We showed you the goal where he got that +1. 2 shots on goal, 2 blocked shots, 2 hits in the loss. In his season debut, game number 1 of the season for Dylan Samberg, a much-needed addition to the Jets' blue line. My hardest working Jet's going to be Kyle Connor, and he really won it on one sequence, and the power play goal had something to do with it, but where the hardest working Jet part of this comes into play was before that. The Jets are killing a penalty, and as they usually do, Kyle Connor stepped onto the ice with 40 to 30 seconds left in that penalty, and the Winnipeg Jets, I believe it was Dylan Samberg, blocked a shot and cleared the puck out. And it was a 2-horse race for the puck, Vince Dunn versus Kyle Connor. And it was an even race. They got to the puck at the same time, but Kyle Connor outmuscled Vince Dunn, drew a penalty, which killed the penalty that the Winnipeg Jets were currently trying to kill. And then on the ensuing power play, Kyle Connor then scores the goal to put the Jets up 3-2 heading into the third period. So in that moment, he won the hardest working Jet for me. Obviously, we talked earlier about the defensive zone issues for that line and some of the concerns there, especially wall play and the reads and execution and all of those things. But in that sequence, that 2.5-minute sequence, I picked Kyle Connor as my hardest working Jet and just stuck with it through the rest of the game. So that's my pick from tonight's game. Lyss took Dylan Samberg. I'm going to take Kyle Connor. And Lyss, let's get to our next segment. And I think there's a lot that we can choose from here. But our standout stat from the game, we like to have our eye test award, who was the hardest working Jet, who stood out. And then we also like to crunch the numbers here on the WST postgame reaction. So what's one stat that stood out to you from tonight's game?
Yeah, I think what I ended up looking for here is I wanted to go find something that would spark a bit of a discussion that I'm sure isn't going to be super popular among Jets fans, but we know that that's never been something I've shied away from. I went to go look at kind of where we're at. You talked about how we're getting into no excuses territory here. Rust should not be a question anymore. Rest shouldn't be either. These guys haven't played too much, and they haven't had, too insane of a schedule or anything like that. They're starting to kind of get into the groove of things, and we're starting to get a big enough sample that early season randomness is getting minimized by the day. When looking at just kind of quality of chances created and given up at 5-on-5 across the board, nobody on this team is in glowing territory whatsoever. A lot of them are actually borderline damning territory. And the person I'm going to highlight here is Jonathan Toews, who at 5-on-5 has a 35% expected goal share right now. Okay. You want to be above 50%. Above 50% is good. That's fine. Anything that is below 45% is like a legitimate orange flag. Below 40% is like glaring red flag territory. Over the course of a full 17 games, being in a 35% 5-on-5 expected goal share when that line that he's played with hasn't had a ton of crazy matchups, and they've played fine minutes and everything like that. Like, that's not great. We're in a Jonathan Toews love fest era right now, and I understand that there have been moments that I've really liked some of what I've seen. I've really liked some of the passes I've seen, especially from below the goal line. I think I talked about that a little bit last game. But like, we need to pump the brakes on how much love we're giving to a lot of these forwards in particular, just when a lot of them don't really have the body to work to show for it kind of through this season so far. So that's kind of including that statistic is inclusive of his performance tonight through all 17 games, 35% expected goal share for Jonathan Toews. You know, the only players in the team with a worse goal share than him are Colin Miller, Parker Ford, Nikita Chibrikov, and Luke Shen. And look, this entire team basically is below 50%, except for like Dylan DeMello and Dylan Samberg. And Dylan Samberg, that doesn't count because one game doesn't mean anything.
It counts to me. It counts to me.
It counts to you. It counts to you. But yeah, so just wanted to kind of bring that up because I think it is an important conversation to have, that we need to continue to hold these guys' feet to the fire and expect, you know, the things that they're expecting of themselves, which is high performance, and not sure if we're seeing it to the full capacity that we're expecting to yet.
For sure. And I said earlier in the postgame, we're getting out of the no excuse zone. We're also getting out of the this sample is too small for me to care zone, where
Correct.
I was in that for Jonathan Toews, where his expected goal share and his chances when with him on the ice, his 5-on-5 goal share, real goals, he's getting outscored 11-6 at 5-on-5. That's a 35% goal share as well. It's just not good. And again, through the first 10 games, small sample, hasn't played in 2 years. Totally get it. I wasn't making these broad sweeping takeaways at that point, but we're also entering the territory now where it's like, okay, if in the month of November, this doesn't improve, we'll have to talk about it a lot more. And I'm
American
glad
Thanksgiving, that's
Yes.
the easiest benchmark date to look at, right? And we're getting close.
And I'm glad you brought that up. And just real quick, Vlad Nemesnikov last year, widely, discussed as needing to be upgraded as the second line center with Nikolai Ehlers on his wing, of course, but he had a 52% expected goal share, 58% goal share at 5-on-5. And like you said, Jonathan Toews, 35% expected goal share. And that lines up with the real goal share, which is at 35%, 11-6. He's being outscored at 5-on-5 right now. So that's something we'll definitely be watching for moving forward. My standout stat is going to focus in more on this game. We talked a lot about the defense pairing of Morrissey and DeMello. They were on the ice for 3 5-on-5 goals against. But like I said, we talked a lot about them. So my standout stat from tonight's game is going to be Connor Hellebuyck's save percentage, 765. He's reigning. Yeah.
Hey, it's better than Dobesh in Montreal tonight.
7-0 loss to the Dallas Stars. That was
5
quite
goals
something.
on 13 shots.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. But Connor Hellebuyck, I'm not bringing up his save percentage to say that he's like a bad goaltender or anything. What I'm saying, obviously, he's the reigning Hart Trophy winner, back-to-back Vezina Trophy winner. Coming into this game, his save percentage was above .921. I just think that save percentage is indicative of what we saw tonight, where the Seattle Kraken maybe weren't controlling the flow of play at times. They weren't shooting from everywhere. They weren't peppering Connor Hellebuyck. But when they did get chances, it was because of, detrimental defensive breakdowns where Jordan Eberle is wide open backdoor, and there's really nothing Connor Hellebuyck can do about it. So when you see Connor Hellebuyck have a 765 save percentage in a game, it's not usually his fault. And I didn't think it was tonight, but still a shocking number to see nonetheless. So I brought up the...
Yeah, I'm not going to give him as much love as you will. I do think that there are times where
Tolvanen
you
goal,
can put
I
your
hated
skaters
the
and
least.
your goals.
Right.
Fair enough.
The power play goal.
But you can put guys into categories, and sometimes, your skaters win you a game when your goaltender isn't performing at his best, and vice versa. And this was a game where neither party was able to win the game for each other. So I understand that Connor Hellebuyck's won this team a lot of games in the past, but Connor Hellebuyck plays at 80% of his best performances. The Jets can win this game, and I'm not trying to hang that on his shoulders, but it is just something to kind of flag for sure, because if he's the best goalie in the world, when he's not performing at best goalie in the world level, we have to acknowledge that as well. Because if every game's your best game, then no game is your best game. And this one's not making the 3 straight Vezina campaign real.
No, it's not. But yeah, Connor Hellebuyck, 4 goals against, on 17 shots in this one, a 765 save percentage. So those were our standout stats from the game. If something stood out to you, if you found something online, scrolling Natural Stat Trick or Money Puck or even the NHL Jets site yourself and you have a stat, drop it in the comments below. We want to hear from you.
They're going to say NHL Edge.
NHL Edge too? Yeah. I mean, hey, whatever people want, throw it in the comments down below. But Lyss, Saturday, we won't have a post-game reaction because it's a Saturday night game.
Correct.
And Saturdays throughout the season, we won't have post-game reactions. What we will have is WST Sunday Live, 9 a.m., Sunday morning, every single Sunday throughout the Winnipeg Jets season. And we'll be back this Sunday breaking down the Jets-Flames game from Saturday night. The Jets take on the Flames at 9 p.m. to wrap up this brutal road trip so far. 1-4 on the trip. They'll try and salvage it with a second win in 6 games on this road trip before returning home. Lyss and I will have you covered with our thoughts from that game and a look ahead to the Jets' upcoming homestand. But from Lyss Houde, I'm Connor Hrabchak. Thank you for watching the WST postgame reaction. We'll talk to you Sunday morning, 9 a.m. on WST Sunday Live.